The Nvidia GeForce 8800 GT offered amazing value when it launched, but why buy one when you can buy two for double the price? 8800 GT in SLI, it's hot, it's loud, it consumes a lot of power, but it's also pretty amazing. Daniel, big thank you for donating these video cards to the channel. The 8800 GT was one of Nvidia's absolute value champions, right up there with the GeForce 4 Ti 4200. I vividly remember when this video card launched, it almost offered the same performance as the high-end and much more expensive 8800 GTX, but of course at a fraction of the price. I remember when it launched here in Australia, it was sold out everywhere and there was a real buzz going on. The video card is single slot. We get two DVI ports with VGA. There's a TV out carrying composite and S-video, a 6-pin power connector at the back. It also has video decoding, which the larger 8800 GTX did not have. So for this project, we need a SLI capable mainboard. And if you want to have something period correct, you need an Enforce motherboard with a Core 2 CPU, but I don't have any of those. Now, the next best thing is the X58 platform. I bought two motherboards from AliExpress, 1 GB that arrived dead on arrival, and another one, Huananji, but that one is not SLI certified. So I looked in my stash of motherboards and I found this one, a beautiful mainboard from ASRock, the P67 Extreme 4. When I start a new project, I go online and I access the manufacturer website, downloading all the drivers, the user manual, and of course, the BIOS. Next, I assemble everything on my test bench. We are using an i5 3570K. This is a CPU from the Ivory Bridge generation. We have some DDR3 memory and a Cooler Master CPU cooler. And yeah, unfortunately, when powering up the machine, it doesn't post. I'm getting 4 loud beeps. And I swapped the card. I tried the second 8800 GT, but unfortunately, I'm getting the same issue. I checked the website again, and under the supported processors, it mentions that the Ivy Bridge CPU, well, they need a BIOS update. So yeah, I pull out the processor and I swap in a Sandy Bridge CPU, an i5 2500K. Unfortunately, that didn't fix the issue. The video card still doesn't work. Having issues with old hardware is nothing new. These parts, well, the video cards at least are over 15 years old. So the next step is I tried a very basic ATI Radeon and yeah, the board worked just fine. So next I wanted to update the BIOS, but the supplied BIOS files, well, they only work in Windows. They don't work from the integrated BIOS flash utility in the BIOS. So quickly I installed Windows 10 and you can see here me updating the BIOS, but unfortunately, yeah, still the same issue. The video cards simply don't seem to work. At that point, I walked away to clear my head, had some breakfast, and I messaged Daniel. And yeah, we had a conversation and it got me thinking that it's quite unusual that both video cards are not working and showing the exact same issue. So maybe there's something else going on. So I tried another motherboard and I try to be organized on the channel, so I have a few systems ready to go with the CPU cooler and everything mounted. And yeah, what do you know? The machine worked just fine. So the 8800 GT cards, both of them worked just fine without any issues on this mainboard. So at this point, I was pretty sure it was some incompatibility with the mainboard. I needed to find another SLI motherboard. I could have gone with AM3, but the Thenon processors, they're a little bit weak, and especially with SLI, you want to have a decent processor to really show what it can do. So we're using this motherboard. It's the Asus Sabertooth Z77. Also, the processor was already installed. It's an i5 3570, I believe. And yeah, on this motherboard, it worked straight out of the box. I had previously already flashed the latest BIOS. Here you can see me tweaking some of the BIOS settings. Well, not so much tweaking. I'm enabling the XMP profile to have the RAM run at the full speed, and then I'm disabling some onboard resources. In the past, I've noticed that if you have too many onboard resources enabled on this main board, it might not run with the full PCI Express lanes in SLI. Windows Vista is the more period correct operating system for these video cards, but the main board and the other parts are a little bit more modern, so I chose Windows 7 64-bit. And yeah, that worked fine. I'm using the Snappy Driver Installer Origin. It finds all the devices and identifies and installs all the drivers. And then I'm downloading and installing the latest Nvidia drivers from their website. So far so good. We're getting a nice desktop with the full resolution. I turn off the machine, install the second card and also the SLI bridge. Windows installs some drivers, and after another reboot we get a message that the system is capable of SLI. So I head to the Nvidia control panel, make sure it's activated, but when testing some games I can see the screen is getting some flashes. Now I have seen this before, so what I did was turn the machine off, and I'm using some alcohol to clean those SLI ports on the video card. I could see there's a little bit of dirt and corrosion going on, and after that, yeah, everything is fine. I have enabled that SLI overlay. It shows you that SLI is working and how efficient it is being utilized. So yeah, now we can run some benchmarks. I forgot to mention the sound card. It's important when doing benchmarking, always have a sound card installed. I'm going with the Creative Labs Sound Blaster X-Fi Titanium. The first game is an older title, Half-Life 2 Lost Coast. I cranked up the resolution to 1920 by 1200. All the details, of course, are maxed out in the settings. A single card gets 169.3, and that increases to 268.43 with SLI. That's a nice performance boost. Far Cry 2 is next, 49.87 for a single card and 92.56 for two cards in SLI. Beautiful scaling, not quite 100%, but we're getting there. The next game, I don't know how to pronounce it, Call of Juarez or something, 24.4 FPS for a single card, and we're almost getting 100% scaling. We're getting 47.5 FPS with the second card. That surprised me because when you launch the game, it's got AMD Radeon marketing all over the shop. And this is Just Cause 2, 49.12 FPS for the single card, and we're getting 90.98 in SLI. So again, very nice scaling. So not a bad video card, but can it run Crysis? Here we have the game running, and I've enabled MSI Afterburner so we can see the temperatures, and yeah, the cards hit the 90s, so very toasty. And this is one of the weaknesses of these cards, the cooling solution with the reference design. Many 8800 GTs don't work anymore because of that. This is the 64-bit version with the DirectX 10 option. All the details are set to very high, and it barely runs the game at around 20 to 30 FPS, so it's definitely not silky smooth. You will have to dial down the graphics. I don't think the CPU is too weak for this game. It should be quite comfortable. It has 4 cores, and from the Ivy bridge generation with a fairly high clock speed, it's definitely these video cards are struggling to run Crysis. And now let's have a look at the main game for this video. It is Just Cause 2. I looked at the benchmark when performing all the tests, and the graphics really impressed me. This game is from 2010, so it's a few years after the video cards launched, and in SLI they do a good job of running this game well. I have cranked up all the details, but there are some settings that I didn't change. I think they have to do with water effects or anything like that, but most of the details are set to the highest settings. The graphics are absolutely beautiful, and this game, yeah, it seems to be like an open world game, but you are still constrained in terms of what you have to do, at least in the beginning. I haven't played too much. You get clear objectives, and at first I found the controls to be a little bit clunky. So you have this grappling hook and a parachute, and yeah, it's quite fun and you can blow things up, but the controls, maybe it's just me having not played this game or not used to modern games, because recently I've been playing some of the older games, and even on easy I managed to die a few times, which is quite quite embarrassing. But yeah, maybe it's the controls. Let me know. I get the impression this might be more fun with an Xbox controller, but I'm not sure. Either way, I managed to complete the first mission, and I want to play more because the graphics are absolutely beautiful. You can grab this game from GOG DRM free. This computer, like all my projects pretty much, they never get connected to the internet, so I do everything offline and I install software either through a USB hard drive, or sometimes are connected to the network and install stuff from my NAS. But that's the beauty with DRM-free games from GOG. You just put the installer on a USB hard drive, install it from there. You don't need a license key, no activation, no launcher, off you go. So all in all, Just Cause 2 is definitely a game I can recommend, and I can't wait to play more. So what is my verdict on using two 8800 GT cards in SLI? Well, they are very hot, they make a lot of noise, they also consume a lot of power, and they might be a little bit picky when it comes to using the right main board, and we had some issues with the SLI bridge. So a beautiful experience. However, is it something I can recommend? Not really, because you can get a single card from a later generation that will easily outperform them, consume less power, generate less heat, and is quieter. All the games we tested here, they don't require a video card from this generation. Most of them, I believe, will work happily under Windows 10 and Windows 11. So it's this period of gaming where compatibility with more modern operating systems and more modern video cards and hardware is actually pretty good. Not the same thing as a Voodoo SLI, where you have the proprietary Glide engine and only those video cards can play those games. So although I can't recommend that you rush out and buy these video cards and an SLI mainboard and put it together, I can definitely say it's something cool, and it's, yeah, a nice look at the past when SLI was a thing, when you could buy two video cards to improve the performance. SLI and Crossfire, it's not around anymore with modern GPUs, so that's a little bit sad for those who want to push the envelope a little bit further. So a nice reminder of what technology used to be like. In terms of the hardware, the main issue was the incompatibility with the ASRock motherboard and these video cards. I'm not sure what's going on. I do know that the 8800 GTs, there were some compatibility issues with PCI Express 1 mainboards, and I believe there were some BIOS updates for the video cards. That's all I remember. But this mainboard supports PCI Express 2 at least, maybe even 3. So I was surprised to run into compatibility issues. It does use one of those PLX, I think, bridge chips that can create more PCI Express lanes. So maybe that's the reason. So all in all, a thumbs up for the experience, for the parts. It's really cool seeing SLI in action, but a thumbs down in terms of recommending it for you guys. You're much better off using a single card from a more modern generation. It will outperform what you saw in this video and do it quieter and also consuming less power. I'm not quite sure what to call these parts. They're not really retro, but they're also not really useful anymore for budget gaming. With an 8800 GT, a lot of modern games don't really run and the performance will be very limited. So they're sort of in that weird zone of, yeah, too young to be retro, but too old to be useful. And pricing is the good thing. Maybe not some of these high-end parts, but parts from this generation can be picked up for cheap, especially the early Core and the Core 2 stuff. Prices are actually very good at the moment. So who knows what will happen in the future, but there are some signs that Steam will stop working under Windows 7, for example, and there might also be an end to the 32-bit era, and maybe that will affect retro gaming and our hobby. Really eager to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the 8800 GT and SLI? Was that a combination you had back in the day? And yeah, leave any questions and thoughts, recommendations down below in the comments. I do read every single one of them. And that's it. I had a lot of fun with this project. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I shall see you soon with another one.